Hi guys, for today's lesson we're going to be dealing with types of data. So first up, let's go through the different types of data. So the first one is categorical data. That's data that involves choosing an answer for a category. So like we're picking from some sort of category. That's why it's called categorical data. So, like for example, e.g., the category could be what your hair color is, or it could be your year level at school. So, categorical data is all about like picking from some sort of category. The idea is you want to be kind of choosing something, picking the category that you're involved with, like what sort of group you're in. It's all about like these sorts of groups. The next type of data is numerical data or quantitative data. We can use either one of these words, they mean the same thing. That is data that involves measuring or counting to determine your answer to the question. So, for example, the survey question could be, what is your height or weight? That would involve like measuring something to determine the answer. You've got to like measure your weight or measure your height. Another example could be the number of pets you own. Like that's where you have to pretty much count to determine your answer. You've got to count the number of pets that you have. So that would be considered in this sort of data category, or like in this sort of data type. Next up is ordinal data. Now, ordinal data is a type of categorical data. So it comes under this categorical data. But it's where the category is made up of options which have an order to them. So an example of this could be your rank in the cadet system. So you could be like, you could be a cadet, or you could be a corporal or lieutenant, etc. So because those different categories for this question like have a different rank, like a ranking system, which definitely has an order from like highest to lowest. That sort of data is considered ordinal data. Nominal data is when is exactly the same as ordinal data, except there is no order to it. So for example, say if you've got the question what your hair color is, like the answers that you're going to be giving for this are things like blonde or brown or black or those sorts of answers. There's no order to them. It doesn't, like colors don't have an order. So therefore we consider that sort of data to be nominal data. Continuous data is a type of numerical data, so it comes under this sort of group of data. It's a type of numerical data where the data has been found by measurement. So decimals and fractions are possible answers for this sort of data. So e.g., the area of your block at home. So if you measure the area of the block at home, you can get like 5.4 acres or like 250 square meters, like 250.35 square meters. Like very specific answers are possible. That's what we call continuous data. Discrete data is a type of numerical data. So again, it falls under this category here. Is a type of numerical data where the data has been found through counting. So only countable values are used. So they're typically whole numbers. You can sometimes count with like halves or quarters, etc. But it's all about counting. That's how we determine the value, the answer for these sorts of questions. So e.g., the number of siblings you have. So typically you're only going to be counting your siblings with whole numbers. So we'd call that sort of data discrete data. Now we can kind of summarize all these different words into a bit of a table, into a bit of a graph here. So data, you got to think to yourself, there's two types of data, and that is categorical and numerical or quantitative. And there is two types of categorical data. That splits into ordinal and nominal. And the numerical data splits into continuous and discrete. So it's really important to be able to understand this sort of graph, because in questions when they're asking about what sort of data is a sort of question following, you've got to be able to tell me which one of these two it is, and you also need to be able to tell me like which one of these two it would be, or which one of these two would it be. So let's practice that. Let's just do a few questions. So determine the type of data collected from the following survey questions. So how long does it take for you to brush your teeth? Now with this sort of question, we're thinking to ourselves, well, how would we figure this question out? How long would it take? The way that we do it is we'd literally get a stopwatch out and figure out how long it takes. So because we're measuring it with a stopwatch, it's definitely going to be numerical. And continuous data is the type of numerical data which is being measured. You can get decimal places with this sort of question. You can get 20.56 seconds. Like if you're timing something, decimals are definitely possible. So it's numerical continuous. Question B, out of 5 stars, what would you rate McDonald's? So with this sort of question, you have to think to yourself, are we picking a category or are we measuring or counting this? So out of 5 stars, what would you rate it? You'd think to yourself, well, you're pretty much picking a rating out of 5. So because you're picking this sort of data, it's definitely going to be categorical. You're picking one of the 5 stars, like it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars. So you're picking, so it's definitely categorical. And your possible answers definitely have an order. Like 1 to 5 has a very specific order. So it's going to be categorical ordinal. Question C, how many hours of sport do you play per week? So when we're figuring out the number of hours of sport, you would definitely count them up in your head, how many hours of sport you do. So counting is definitely numerical, and discrete data is when you are counting, like using whole numbers only. You could decide to say 3.5 hours, but you would never measure it. You would never get a stopwatch out and count and determine how many hours of sport you play per week, because you're not going to measure that sort of thing. You're going to be counting it in your head. It could be 4, it could be 4.5, it could be 5, but yeah, it's about counting, so it's going to be definitely discrete. Hope this helps with the questions. Bye.